My deep appreciation of theater history was instilled in me by Tom Empey, a college mentor to me and hundreds of others. While teaching Greek theater terms, he would grab the fabric of his slacks and say, "You see these pants? Euripides Eumenides," making light of content that could be considered rather dry and stuffy while still maintaining respect for the art, which is what I want to do with this podcast. For each episode, I invite a guest from the many paths my theater career has taken me down. I give my guest no idea what we'll be talking about, but they know we're going to find an outrageous story about theater history and perhaps get a better understanding about why we're still doing it after all these years. So welcome to Euripides Eumenides, and I am your host, Aaron Odom.
Apocalypse, apocalypse, I said, why you wanna show up now? Just when the heart of my life was getting good. I'll give you one more chance. Walk on out of the door, yeah. Get your ass to getting where the getting is good.
Good morrow, Eumenidites! This is Aaron Odom from Trident Theater bringing you another episode of Euripides Eumenides, a theater history podcast. Here we are, episode 94. 100 is just down the road, and I'm closing in on some great ideas and guests for that centenary episode. But, as I've mentioned on previous episodes, I will entertain topics if you'd reach out to me. Both Euripides Eumenides and Trident Theater have Instagram feeds. Trident Theater has a Facebook page. You can always go to tridenttheater.com and use a contact us form, or even just write me an email at trident@tridenttheater.com. I'll take emails, I'll take DMs, I'll take YouTube comments, whatever. Bring them on. I'd love to hear what you have to say. I look forward to hearing from each and every one of you. But as I approach a big topic for episode 100, I'm finding a lot of fantastic little snippets of theater history that are really quite juicy and absolutely worth sharing. So for this episode, I brought back Zach Schneider, who's been on the show several times and is always a delight. Zach is a high school arts educator in Casper, Wyoming, and since he's been on the show last, his scope hasn't entirely left theater. It's just expanded to include more things. I'll let him explain as we start the episode. But for today's episode, we trip the light fantastic and travel to the British Renaissance once again. So without further ado, here is episode 94, William Kempe and the 9 Days Wonder. Oh man, Zach, it's so good to have you on here again. It's been so long that I didn't even realize your job had changed.
Yeah.
But you're still a high school theater educator in Wyoming.
I am now. I think the last time we talked, I was chapter director for Wyoming Thespians, which I still am.
Yep.
And I also teach theater at Natrota County High School. And since we've talked, I've taken on film and digital media. So before it was a separate class, it was a career in tech ed class. We've moved it over into fine and performing arts, and I convinced them to let me teach it and still stay in theater. So
nice.
I get to do film, and my first job before I got into teaching theater was a journalist for the Casper Star Tribune.
Oh.
And so news and media has always been in my blood. I'm a political junkie. I'm a news junkie, and so yeah, it is. It's like, 20 years ago, I thought, what would I really want to be? And I thought professor of pop culture, because I love everything, like movies and music and television. And I mean, we grew up in the best time for pop culture.
We absolutely did. Yeah. I was just thinking, like, the other day, like, I looked at 1984 or something like that, and I'm like, how many banger movies came out in 1984?
Yeah. But I mean, also look at what the top 20 albums were that year. I mean, and also we had access, right? It was curated access. I remember watching I Love Lucy reruns and The Honeymooners and George Burns and Gracie Allen.
Oh my God.
And like all of those, like vaudeville was a part of my media diet. It's what got me into performing. And
Oh, wow.
kids don't see any of that today. We've become so like fractured and disjointed. I wanted to be a professor of pop culture because I feel like, our cultures are fractured. So now I got to like mold the job that I was doing, the high school job I was doing, into what I want to do.
Oh, that's
So I'm
awesome.
excited. I'm halfway through my teaching career. I wanted to shake it up a bit, but I still love
Yeah.
theater. I'm not gonna give that up.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you this. How much of that then is helping these students understand how to become, say, an influencer or something like that, or how to maintain like a web presence or something like that?
I look at I really I hate the word influencer. I think my son wants to be a YouTube streamer. That's his goal.
I have one of those too.
And so yeah, we all do. Because why wouldn't you? You get to sit around, play video games, and talk to your friends and get an income stream. But I think part of it is teaching kids that, okay, number one, you need to generate creative content, right?
Right.
Your
Yes.
voice is unique. And so the way that you deliver that voice needs to be unique. And if it catches on, awesome. If it doesn't, keep making it.
Yeah.
Right. And so I try to teach them, yes, this is something that's worth doing, but at the same time, don't bank it. Just like, we teach our acting students.
Hmm.
What
Hmm.
did Tom MP tell us? That the percentage of people who go to school to make a living acting is less than 5% that
Yep.
actually do.
Yeah.
So if you go, I mean, you've got to go into it with an artist's mindset and not a capitalist's mindset,
Hmm.
if that makes any
Hmm.
sense.
Yes. Yeah.
The same thing is with film creation. If you
Yep.
are creating creative media, and I want to shy away from content because that's the monetized word, right?
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you're creating art to put out there in the world, your audience will find it. And if they
Yeah.
don't, you put it out there.
Yeah, put it out there. If it doesn't land, there are different ways to express your creativity. I'm actually just thinking about these two. They started on Vine, these two dingy girls, and they each had their own channel. And, you'd watch them and you're like, okay, these are actually pretty funny. And then you find out that because people started to pay attention to that, they started to find their creativity with it and become more interesting and actually become kind of artists in their own right
Oh yeah,
because there was just that, I guess, a hole that they filled. You know what I mean?
sure.
So now they have these massive followings, and they even like got a box at the Super Bowl last year because that's how big they are now.
Yeah, yeah.
That's awesome.
Bo Burnham. You-
Yeah.
you- but I also like to bring him in as an example. I watched a YouTube explainer video today that was talking about how the fame that he's gotten has not been an easy road for him, right? I think
Right.
Mr. Beast talked about this, that for every one of me, there are a million people who never make it doing this. And the amount of
Yes.
work that you
Yes.
have to do to sustain it is exhausting.
Yeah. I run this podcast. I get it.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're still doing theater though, and what was your
Mhm.
slate last year?
Last year, our musical we did in the fall, we did Guys and Dolls.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And yeah, yep. And then the play, we did, what did we do? I didn't direct it. Harvey.
Oh.
We went
Oh,
we
that.
went old
Yep.
school and did
Yeah.
Harvey.
Some nice
Yeah.
people pleasing stuff. I'm actually I'm president of our community theater board up here, and that's the last show of our season coming up. I'm pretty excited about it. So what do you got coming up this year?
This year we're flipping it, so we'll do the play in the fall. That's going to be directed by my new partner that the school has hired, Ryan
Oh yeah.
Landman.
Cool.
And he's going to be directing The Outsiders, the play, not the
Oh yeah.
musical.
Well, we can't do the musical yet.
Nope, not yet. And then I get to direct. It's our. This is a special season for us. Not only is it the 100th anniversary of the John F. Welsh Auditorium
Oh,
opening
whoa.
to the public. Yeah, that's pretty big. But Steve Grusendorf, the longtime choir teacher who
Yes.
started here 30 years ago,
Yes. I
he's
remember Steve.
finally hanging it up.
Oh,
So he's going to be retiring. And so I told him, you get to pick the musical. It's
okay.
a good thing I love him because I am going to have ABBA running through my head
Oh,
for the next year. So, yep, we're doing
no.
Mamma Mia.
Mamma Mia.
Yep,
Well, there you go. And those big, ridiculous costumes. And who's the dad? Who cares?
yep. Who cares? You know, mom's a slut. We're gonna play it very high school Shakespearean. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's the way I've got to come at it is yes, it's got ABBA, but it's a very kind of it if Shakespeare could do a sex comedy,
Yeah.
like outwardly,
Hmm.
Mamma Mia would be one he would do.
Right. Right. Well, that's awesome. I love hearing what people are doing and everything and how they're selecting their stuff. But speaking of Shakespeare, Zach, I brought you here for a reason. Thought we'd get right into the content today, and I sent you a question to think about.
Mm-hmm.
And here is the question. Without Googling, who is an obscure theater artist contemporary of Shakespeare that pops into your head?
Yeah, you Googled you sent this to me. I gave it the first thought and then did not do any more research, even though I wanted to. Um, and I said, the only two names that come to mind right now are, I mean, I guess I could say Richard Burbage, but
Mhm.
he's the money dude.
Yep.
Ben Jonson and
Mhm.
Thomas Kidd.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
but I didn't really think that Johnson and Kidd were all that obscure to theater
Mm-mm.
nerds, but
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, they're just those names that when you go through a theater history class, they're just like on the list. It's
Mhm.
like, no, you really actually might want to read some of these plays. That would be that would be really beneficial to everybody.
Yeah,
So we
yeah,
don't just get the idea that Shakespeare wrote everything, right?
sure. And I mean, when we're given it when we're like 18, 19 years
Oh
old.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but there were several times when I went into my dramatic literature class. I read the play, but the night before I had ingested some substances that weren't conducive to sleeping.
As
But
college
yeah,
students are
so
wont to do.
yeah. Dumb decisions. Don't do drugs, kids.
Well, I remember thinking like I attacked it like somebody who's trying to learn everything in a fictional universe. So, there you have your central main character. You have your William Shakespeare. But then who's the Han
Sure.
Solo? Is it Christopher Marlowe? It might be. Who's the Leia?
Uh,
I mean, it's
uh-huh. Leia would be who's the young boy who played Will, what's his name, who played Juliet and all the young girls?
oh, I
That
well,
would be
it
Leia.
that might be who we're talking about today. So, without further ado,
Oh,
here we go. It is assumed that William Kempe, who came to be known as, quote, the most famous English clown on the late 16th century, was born in 1560. Sometimes he just went by Will. And this might be who we're talking about, but in all of my research, I did not read that William Kempe was the young woman in all of these things. It might be, I don't know.
okay.
Anyway, from what I can tell, there's no real record of his birth. His parentage is unknown. The first official historical record that this William Kempe was actually a person came in the form of a roster from the acting company Leicester's Men, of which Kempe was
Huh.
listed. And I should say Kempe is spelled Kempe, just so we can put that out there.
Sure. But that's odd because usually, I mean, when we're looking at Shakespearean records, right? You're
Mhm.
looking at baptismal dates because the
Yes.
church, they had the records, right?
Right.
And so, when people argue about Shakespeare and authorship, which I don't want to get into,
No.
I mean, the fact of the matter is nobody wrote anything down, right?
Mm-mm.
Except for
Mhm.
like important stuff. So the fact that this dude didn't even have that, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Hmm.
Hmm.
He was low born, in my opinion. So anyway, he's part of Leicester's men, and Leicester's men accompanied Lord Leicester as he toured the Netherlands during the 80 Years' War. But this was from 1585 to 1586, so I'm assuming historians have just concluded that he was born in 1560. Like I said, nothing was written down about his birth or baptism.
Okay.
So, for the rest of the 1580s, Kemp's whereabouts were not documented. Now, the famous comic actor Richard Tarleton died in 1588, and it is assumed that Kemp just kind of took his spot in the zeitgeist as resident funny man on stage.
Or did Tarleton really die?
Ooh.
That's it.
I think on the Laura Keene episode, you had avowed to become a Lincoln truther, that he didn't actually die or something like that.
Yeah, I think he's probably living with Elvis somewhere. He's still to this day. I mean,
right?
Vampire Hunter, he became part of the Vampire
That's right.
Coven.
That's right.
Mhm.
Yeah. Did he take the Death Becomes Her potion? Maybe so.
Mm.
Anyway, Kemp was often compared to Tarleton, as several people are quoted to have said that they acted in a very similar way. And this might go back to, we were talking about dramatic lit and theater history courses. There has been so much debate on exactly what the Elizabethan acting style was. But I also credit that to, well, there were a lot of people doing different things. It was a time of rebirth and regrowth, and they were just trying new things out. So there wasn't a way of acting. Not everybody was doing what Meryl Streep does. And thank God.
Well, there can only be one Meryl Streep.
Correct. And she is the mother in Mamma Mia.
Here we go again.
Yep. It is not to be ignored, however, that Kemp was listed on the title page of the 1592 quarto printing of the play A Knack to Know a Knave, first presented by the acting company Lord Strange's Men. Now, being placed on the title page is kind of like getting a name on a movie poster, which kind of implied that Kemp, by 1592, had to have been something of a draw, right?
Sure.
Okay, Star is Rising.
Give me that title again. That alliteration is wonderful.
Isn't that great? And it's all KN words. A Knack to Know a Knave.
A Knack to Know a Knave.
I can't remember.
Lovely.
I don't think it had an author on it, but yeah, that was a great line.
In the English, then it was a Kanaki to Kanoe, a Kanae.
Right. A Kanawi, because the U is a V.
Yeah.
The acting company Lord Chamberlain's Men formed in 1594. Included in the roster were such names as acting titans and brothers Richard and Cuthbert Burbage. I totally forgot he had a brother named Cuthbert.
Cuthbert. Well, yeah. I mean,
Cuthbert Burbage.
Yeah, and thankfully he went by Richard. Dick and Cuth.
Dick and Cuth, yeah. Or Bert. He could have just gone by Bert.
Or Bert. Yeah, he could have. But how many English names at that time ended in Bert?
Right.
Right? I mean, throw a rock, you're going to hit a Bert.
Also included in the roster was this little actor and writer known as William Shakespeare, and an up-and-coming comic actor, William Kempe, was also in Lord Chamberlain's Men. They were all working together. Initially, Lord Chamberlain's Men performed at the Rose Theatre before moving to the theater. I love that. That was another one of those things, like, your list of Star Wars planets. It's like you learn Dagobah, you learn Tatooine, you learn Coruscant. In theater history, we're like, we got to know the Rose, we got to know the Globe, and the theater. It's just the theater. We're going to the theater. Which one? The theater.
It takes a lot of huevos to say the theater, and people know which one you're talking about.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that must have been, they're sitting around drinking. What should we call it? The theater.
The theater, dumbass.
Well, what do you mean? Well, when people say, what are you doing tonight? Well, I'm going to the theater.
And that means the one place.
The one. Was it the only one, though? Was it the only one, like the first one built south of the Thames? And so there weren't any other, like...
Yes, I think you're right.
Because the rest of them were like inns, right? They were like, you go to an inn, or you go to a rich dude's like living room, right? And you do your thing.
Right.
Yeah. But this was the first like building that was for theater.
Yeah.
If I'm wrong, comments will tell us.
I have a feeling you're right, and I love the idea of there were those periods where it's like, okay, no theater can be in London. Okay, we can have theater back in London. Okay, no, we're kicking you out again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I would imagine that's what happened. The first person says, "This is the theater. None others can exist." And then when a competition had to, they're like, "Oh, great! Now we have to come up with something."
The
And they look
Rose.
the Rose.
They're walking through the park. The Rose.
There it is. I see a rose. We'll call it a rose. At least it's not the dog shit theater, I suppose.
Would a theater by any other name smell as sweet?
Now, during a brief period in which theaters were closed in London due to offensive material, the Lord Chamberlain's men likely toured some of the smaller provinces in England. And it is known that most of the comic roles written in this time were played by Kempe for Lord Chamberlain's men. He is known to have originated the role of Dogberry in Much Ado About Nothing.
The best role in that play. The best role.
Yep. Beatrice and Benedict, piss off.
And who wants to be hero and what's his face?
Yeah, exactly. I forgot his name. I was in that show and I forgot.
It's all Dogberry.
I forgot the handsome young man's name. I don't care.
It's the only Shakespeare I've done at the high school level because I think it's the one kids get the most.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was like my second, third year. My Dogberry had some life issues and dropped out 3 weeks before performance.
Oh, man.
And so I called in this actor, Drew Stratton, and a great kid. And that kid went through the ringer to learn those lines, but he played that part. I mean, he was all back then. He was all about maybe 4'9", but he was, when he was on stage, he was the biggest one up there, and it was awesome. I love that play. Anyway,
that is the one role that if I ever got a chance to do it again, I'd do it. Because the first time I did it, I one of my roommates in college was in the show with me, and he's like, "You were hilarious in that," and I'm like, "I don't think I got it. I'd like to do it again, and I'd love to do it." And I'm stealing this from one of our old friends from Casper. I'd like to do it with a lisp.
Oh yeah,
God's my life. Where's the Sexton? Have it written down that I am an ass.
Yeah, you gotta go full on Sylvester.
That I am an ass. Oh God, that would be funny. Anyway, so Kempe, that just still blows my mind. You talk like I've had episodes on the show where we talk about when somebody creates a role on Broadway or something like that, like Patti LuPone creating Evita after somebody else had already done it. But this guy was the first Dogberry.
Right. The first Dogberry, the first Bottom. I mean, the first Falstaff. Can you imagine?
Ooh,
like you're the dude.
You're it. Yep. He also originated the role of Peter, the hapless servant of the Capulets in Romeo and Juliet. And he's also noted to have played Lancelot Gobbo in The Merchant of Venice and Bottom, not necessarily that he originated the role in Midsummer Night's Dream. And of course, like you just said, he's known for playing Falstaff in both Merry Wives and The Henriade.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, I always took him for a small dude.
Well, we might be talking about different people because, I think we are. I think your analogy earlier was also great. Throw a rock in the air, you're going to hit a Will too. At that time.
Right. Okay, so good. Will Kempe. I have the picture. I've got the wood carving in my head.
However, by this time, Kempe had also earned a reputation for being an accomplished dancer. Now, this wasn't ballet, but rather English folk dance and sometimes comedic improvised dance that ended up being quite lewd. Kempe was known for all kinds of dance, but specifically was noted as an expert at Morris dance. Now, Zach, do you know what Morris dance is?
No, I have no idea.
Okay.
Nothing to do with Saved by the Bell, Zach Morris.
Nope. Okay. Unfortunately not. No. Or the cat from 9 Lives. There we go. Yeah. Morris dance, from what I understand, the word came from an old Flemish word that basically meant to dance. And it has nothing to do with like the Moors who were all over the Mediterranean at that time. Has nothing to do with that.
Oh. So it's like chai tea, tea. but it's the dance.
Yeah, exactly.
The theater. I'm noticing a pattern here. Mm-hmm.
Let's just be repetitive and no one will notice.
No.
No. So I'm going to do my best to describe in an audio format what Morris dance is and how it has evolved. Here's a quote I found. I believe this is from the New York Times. Morris dance is believed to have started as a form of royal court entertainment in the 15th century. Over time, it became the preserve of working class men in the villages from which the dances originated, often performed in front of a pub. Costumes usually consist of white shirts and pants, hard black shoes, sashes with village colors, and bells and ribbons. Each village's dance is different from the next, in formation, footwork, or character work. End quote. The bells and ribbons are usually worn on the forearms and the shins. So they'll tie like a ribbon right under the knee, and it has like several ribbons with bells and stuff on them.
So they're probably flailing around or using their hands and their legs. And
yep, absolutely.
I like how we totally know what they wore down to what they're wearing on their wrists.
Yep.
Dances depends.
It depends.
Meh.
But it's that reminds me of that documentary from the 2000s. It was called Rise, Rize, all about krump dancing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like,
yeah.
It was like inner city kids, urban dancing. And if you missed a day, you are gone. You're out. You don't know what's going on anymore because you didn't show up, because it evolves on a daily basis. I don't think Morris dancing is like that. But
no.
But it does sound like each little village developed their own style of it. And, you know, it's just like football teams over there. They all have their own colors and they're all very loyal to a certain brand and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right.
Now, Morris dancers also often perform the dance to music using props such as sticks, handkerchiefs, and swords.
Nice.
I mean, they would hold the handkerchiefs, and they're long handkerchiefs, and they'd swing them around and everything, but then a sword comes into it.
I would go to a lot more dance performances if sword play was involved.
Axe throwing and flames. I like this.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, yeah, it's Swan Lake, but if there's the danger of one of them being beheaded, okay.
The Nutcracker with chainsaws. Now, there is a saying in England, quote, try anything once except incest and Morris dancing. It's kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing of saying the old folk stuff is a little too old and folksy.
Oh, because you're talking about like you said 15th century, so you're talking 1400s. By the time he's doing it on stage, it's 100 years old.
Yeah, over 100 years old. Yeah,
right. So it's like us doing square dancing. It's square dancing.
Yeah, let's polka.
Yeah.
But from what I understand, actually, today there is something of a resurgence of the art form all across England, and something of an ironic acceptance of an old joke.
I would love to see like a combination of old 70s punk and Morris dancing.
Oh, hell yeah. Especially with swords.
Slam Morris dancing with swords.
Now, in any case, outside of being a tremendous comedic draw to plays put on by the Lord Chamberlain's men, Kempe would almost be equally known for his dancing, often dancing a jig just after the main feature at a theater would conclude. So you've just gone through Julius Caesar, and this jackass comes out and does a stupid dance. I guess takes the edge off.
Come on, get happy.
And Kempe was at one point listed as one of the top 5 shareholders in Lord Chamberlain's men. So he was big. Yeah.
Well, I mean, so what I'm getting from you is that this guy is the Chris Farley, John Belushi, Jack Black of the globe, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or historians get off of my back now. Summer is just ending, and so my brain isn't there. But I mean, this guy is he's the funny guy. He's the funny guy.
He's the guy
who's going to fall on the table, and he's going to sing and dance and hit me, baby, one more time.
Yep. I guess that's the Josh Gad now. Yeah. Yep. By 1599, the company had all bought in to build the Globe Theater, with one surprising omission. William Kempe was no longer listed as a member of the company when the Globe's construction was complete.
Oh, so he didn't make it out of the theater.
Yeah. Well, remember, they toured for a little bit. So
Right.
when they got
Oh,
back
yeah,
to
yeah,
London,
because everything got shut down because. So my question is, you said everything got shut down because of material.
yeah.
Was it like the matrons for liberty? Were they like, you
Oh,
can't have him dressing up as a woman, no drag?
why can't we review all of the materials before we see them? What?
You know what a bear bodkin really is. You know.
And ankles? Mm.
Mm.
Now, it's not entirely clear what caused the split, but there are some hints at infighting. Some suggest that Kempe began to savor making the audience laugh more than staying in character and presenting the piece as written. Basically, it sounded like he went off book fairly often just to get laughs.
He was improvising.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was riffing.
He's a comedian. Of course.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lord of what's his face didn't like that. I mean, Shakespeare didn't like.
Shakespeare.
I mean,
yeah.
Milton.
Shakespeare.
Shakespeare didn't like. Hey, speak the words. You speak the speech trippingly on the tongue.
Oh, you are getting ahead of me here. I love it though. So yeah, Shakespeare apparently hated this, writing about it several times, but never specifically calling Kempe out by name. But like you were just saying, in Hamlet, the title character gives some advice to the players before the infamous play within a play. And here, I'm going to read it. And let those that play your clowns speak no more than is set down for them. For there be of them that will themselves laugh, to set on some quantity of barren spectators to laugh too, though in the meantime some necessary question of the play be then to be considered. That's villainous, and shows a most pitiful ambition in the fool that uses it.
That is awesome.
He wrote a diss track.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Kempe not like us. Kempe not exactly. Like us.
And yeah, exactly. Many consider those words to be directed at Kempe. But remember, that was in Hamlet. That was like 2 years after 1599. But he wrote that.
You know, Shakespeare was a catty bitch.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
The headmaster that rapped his knuckles in the 3rd grade for not writing the Latin out correctly. He's the dude. He's Malvolio, right? Yep. I mean, cross garters. I'm going to make a fool out of you by dressing you up in yellow cross garters. See, Shakespeare, stone cold, catty bitch.
He's got the acrylic nails. He's clicking. Yeah, love it. Now, one blog I read had this to say: Kempe felt that Shakespeare's plays were losing their comic edge. And Kempe insisted to Shakespeare that no production of Hamlet would be complete without a dog on wheels.
That's genius. I never thought about that. Where would you put if you had to put a dog on wheels in Hamlet, where would you put it?
Get thee to a nunnery. I mean, just this bite and the sting of that, and then here's the little dog just with its back legs on a little wagon and just paddling across the stage.
I like that. And I'm going to put a callback at the very end when everybody's laying there dead, bleeding on the stage. The dog just comes in and just, starts licking out on Hamlet's cheek or something.
And then goes and pees on Laertes' foot or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm down with it. That takes that edge off. That takes that edge off. Genius. That's the jig. That's the jig.
You don't even need the dance at the end.
No. There we go. Yep.
Dog on wheels.
Now, it's also said that some of Kempe's jigs got a little too inappropriate for the more well-to-do members of the audience, but, I'm sure the groundlings loved it.
Hey, put your Morris away.
That's
We don't need that here.
I understand you wear a codpiece. I didn't know that you'd be flailing it.
We didn't think it would be the only thing you'd be wearing.
I just read this the other day that when filming 1 Hour Photo, Robin Williams improvised like an entire second script for that as though it were a comedy and not this dark, terrible thing. And apparently for one entrance, just to get the crew like light, he came out completely nude and acted like he didn't know he was. Just freaking brilliant. Anyway,
is something you can't do today. Get the intimacy director.
You know, as an actor, I may not have 1000% appreciated working with Kemp on stage if he just planned to riff all the time, but as an audience member, I may have no choice but to love each and every little thing that he does. And what's the 9 Days Wonder that the title boasts? You'll see soon enough. But before we get back to the episode, I just wanted to remind you to like, rate, review, follow, and share the show in whatever way you can. Your help would be truly appreciated to help the audience grow. Anyway, let's get back to Zach Schneider and the rest of this episode, William Kempe and the 9 Days Wonder. So anyway, 1599, Kemp's out of Lord Chamberlain's Men. From there, it looks like Kemp went solo.
Of course he did.
Of course he did.
Yeah. He pulled an Ian McKellen and he just went on tour doing Kemp's greatest hits, Falstaff's greatest hits, didn't he?
Yeah.
Just ripped off Shakespeare and just did his own thing and made it better.
Actually, he basically did like a Taylor Swift Eras tour all over England doing his comic dances and jigs. Heck with this spoken word stuff. You're here to see me get a pie in the face.
And thrust my hips in the air.
But his most famous event would have been the 9 Days Wonder. Have you ever heard of the 9 Days Wonder, Zach?
It calls me back to that time in college, but no, I don't know. I don't know the 9 Days Wonder.
So the origins of this stunt are also foggy. Many suggest it was mainly just a publicity stunt, which it was, to keep Kemp's name in the spotlight. But it's also suggested that it started as part of a pub bet in which Kemp claimed that he could Morris dance his way all the way from London to the town of Norwich in 9 days' time. And the distance there is about 177 kilometers, or for us in America, nearly 110 miles.
Okay. So 9 days dancing.
Oh, you don't think I can do it? You don't think I can do it? I'll show you.
Please do.
And evidently, this did happen. Quote, with him were his tabor player, Thomas Sly, his servant, William B., and a man called George Spratt, who was there purely as an overseer of the task to be sure Kemp didn't cheat.
Okay, so tabor. You remind me what a tabor is?
Tabor is
it a drum?
It's like a tambourine, just without the jingle jangles. So yeah, it's just kind of a flat drum, and you know, boom, 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 boom. Yeah.
So that's the only music he's dancing to. So the tabor player, his manager, and basically the Guinness Book of World Records judge.
Yeah.
I think it's more impressive that the tabor player said, "Yeah,
followed him along.
I'm gonna hit that drum for 9 days and march with you."
You know what that was?
Surprising.
I'm hearing this right now, and I'm thinking that's that musician who's told, you know what? I don't think I can pay you, but you're going to get a hell of a lot of exposure.
Oh, the people, they will talk about your tabor playing from here to wherever you can think of.
Yeah. Now, Kemp didn't exactly cheat, but he also didn't apparently include in the bet exactly when the 9 days were supposed to start, nor when they were supposed to end.
He's one of those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He started in Whitechapel, right in the middle of London, on the first Sunday in Lent. He did end up in Norwich, evidently on a Saturday, some 4 weeks later.
Yeah. It's like, I'm going to dance for a day, and then I'm going to hang out. We'll drink.
Yep.
Stretch, and then I'll dance for another day.
Yep.
Did you do half days, do you think?
Oh, well, I read most of the pamphlet that he wrote. I'm going to talk about that here in a minute. But
Okay.
yeah, sometimes he would just hang out for a few days because he got people were like, oh my God, it's that funny guy. He should just hang out here for a little while. And they put him up.
Sure.
And, between London and Norwich, Kemp would stop and get into all kinds of hijinks, all meant to bolster the buzz around his dancing feat. He would stop and stay at many inns and pubs and make tons of money on the bet that he could dance all his way to Norwich.
This is fantastic.
I know. And if he really enjoyed a place, he'd stay there for several days, doing all kinds of physical feats to impress upon people that his feat would be one that would require great stamina.
Sure. Like, you need to feed me. This requires a lot of food. You got to give me some food. He's probably eating for free, drinking for free.
Yep.
He's probably, shacking up with the ladies.
Oh,
he's having a great time. He's like the Who on tour.
Where they're like, oh my God, it's him. Clear the table, clear the table. And it's on us tonight. Thank you for gracing us with your presence. You brilliant man.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And I'm sure many did actually witness him completing his 9 days dance. Upon returning to London, Kemp wrote a pamphlet covering the entire ordeal. He wrote a very flowery dedication thusly, quote, "To the true ennobled lady and his most bountiful mistress, Mistress Anne Fitton, maid of honor to the most sacred royal Queen Elizabeth." End quote. In my research, there was a lot of doubt from Kemp's haters that he never actually did the trip at all, but rather concocted the whole story to gain more fame in London.
Yeah. At this time, you don't need to do anything. You just, you write it would be like me throwing up a Substack of this cool thing I did. And back then, though, nobody else can challenge you. That what are they going to? They're going to write a pamphlet saying, "Oh, that's all made up."
Right. Well, look at what happened to Hamilton and Mariah Reynolds with a pamphlet.
Yeah.
Anyway, thus Kemp invoked the name of the Queen's handmaiden in his pamphlet, who he may or may not have had a relationship with, as though any doubt of the completion of the feat would be a blight on his mistress's honor.
What?
Yeah, that's why I'm thinking he made this dedication.
His response is, I've got to put this like impeachable name on this.
Yep.
Because if anybody comes back and says it's bullshit, then they're saying
you're dishonoring her name by calling me a liar.
I guess I guess you could do that with anybody, though. I could write the most fantastic tale and say, this is dedicated to, I don't know, who is somebody everybody loves.
How about Edgar Allan Poe? This is dedicated to the memory of Edgar Allan Poe, who will haunt you if you write a bad review.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I don't get the logic, but the whole like flowery thoughts of honor and all of that stuff was weird then.
It sure was. Kemp is clearly the hero in his story, a champion of the people, as Morris dancing had become less and less a courtly ritual and more of a celebration of the common folk. But as his own biographer, he was able to recount many deeds that may or may not have happened. Here are just a few. Kemp jumped over a churchyard wall in Norwich, a leap so outstandingly high that to commemorate it, the shoes he'd been wearing were nailed to the wall of the Guildhall.
So that's like hanging up his jersey?
Yeah. Or like Michael Jordan's Air Jordans.
Sure. There they are. This is like the Elizabethan Hard Rock Cafe.
Yeah.
Right? You see those shoes? You jumped over a wall in those shoes.
I remember the first time I went to a Planet Hollywood and I saw Arnold Schwarzenegger's leather jacket from Terminator 2. And I'm looking back on it now. I'm going, no, it wasn't. They could have told me any jacket was his jacket, and I'd be like, whoa.
Yeah.
Kemp evidently had a great deal of fun in the town of Sudbury, where he stopped to visit with, quote, a very kind gentleman master Foscue that had before travailed afoot from London to Barwick. Now I looked that up. That's much farther than London to Norwich. Like I think I read it. It's like maybe it would take you a couple days on foot, but he walked it. He didn't dance it.
Sure.
This is going to Lance Armstrong and going, okay,
Right.
how do you do what you do? I understand you did it on a bike. I'm dancing this. So yeah. So he stopped to see this Master Foscue as he gave Kemp all kinds of advice on how to manage such a journey, especially tips on diet for the trip.
Carbo load, just
Carb load. Here's these energy bars.
lots of bread.
And several eggs a day, at least.
I don't think they had pasta back then, so.
Yeah, no, just, mini breads. Oh, while in Sudbury, Kemp also recounted the following, quote, "In this town of Sudbury there came a lusty tall fellow, a butcher by his profession, that would in a morris keep me company to Bury St. Edmunds. I, being glad of his friendly offer, gave him thanks, and forward we did set. But ere we measured half a mile of our way, he gave me over in the plain field, protesting he would not hold out with me, for indeed my pace in dancing is not ordinary." End quote.
So I met this hot, strapping young butcher who is he was going to go along with me, but he couldn't keep up. I was just too much for him.
Yep.
Look at how manly I am. He looked at me, this man who never cried in his life with tears in his eyes, and he said, "I can't go on." This guy, he just went, he went from Jack Black. If England were a democracy at this time, he would run for president. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. I mean, I'm seeing him go from Jack Black to Andy Dick really quick.
Or a certain, dude with a bad hairdo and an oddly colored skin.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Sure.
Yeah. As the two were parting ways, what Kemp called a lusty countrywoman called out the man for quitting so early, and then she vowed to join Kemp for at least a mile, since the man could only do half. And here's the little quote on that. "I looked upon her, saw mirth in her eyes, heard boldness in her words, and beheld her ready to tuck up her russet petticoat. I fitted her with bells, which she, merrily taking, garnished her thick short legs, and with a smooth brow bade the taborer begin. The drum struck. Forward marched I with my merry maid Marian, who shook her fat sides, and footed it merrily to Melford, being a long mile. There parting with her, I gave her, beside a skinful of drink, an English crown to buy more drink, for good wench she was in a piteous heat."
This dude didn't do any of this. This is all metaphor for a night of drinking, and some dude said, "I can keep up with you," and he drank that guy under the table, and then this bar wench is like, "Oh, that's great, I'm gonna drink with you." He's skin full of drink.
Well, I mean, honestly, what would she say? Like, bullshit, we went upstairs and had a night. Oh, no, now
they in the French fashion, and the butcher couldn't hang. He like tapped out halfway through, said, "You two, you got to do your thing. I got to get.
I'm spent. It's over." Yeah. So Kemp then commemorated this woman in verse, as you might have seen, like earlier was prose. Here's the verse: "A country lass brown as a berry, blithe of blee in heart as merry, cheeks well fed and sides well larded, every bone with fat flesh guarded. Meeting Mary Kemp by chance was Marian in his Morris dance. Her stump legs with bells were garnished, her brown brows with sweating varnished, her brown hips when she was lag, to win her ground went swig a swag. which to see all that came after were replete with mirthful laughter. Yet she thumped it on her way with a sportly hey de gay. At a mile her dance she ended, kindly paid and well commended.
Yeah, it's again Shakespearean Sir Mix-a-Lot. You know, there's a lot of
I mean, it is. This is
mm-hmm.
not a guilty confession. He's saying he is. I like I like fat hips, and I
I
cannot lie.
I like that, and it's in that old English, so probably PHAT, and yeah.
So, yeah, he had what seemed to be a hardy woman accompany him. He put the bells on her legs, which seems inappropriate.
Uh-huh. He's got to reach up the skirt to get that.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no. I'll put the ones on your arms. You can do the ones on your legs. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of which he paid her to go get a pint because she did such a good job. See, it's a nice little lovely story. It has nothing. I think you're digging way too deep into this.
Yeah, I probably am. I'm not at all.
No. And
No.
here's one more to prove me right or prove you right, whichever. Let's go over one more incident. This was much later in the saga, after the word had gotten out about his stunt, and through the entire thing, it does go in and out of prose and verse, which a lot of writing did. Here's this next little bit in prose. Passing from Clare towards Bury, I was invited to the house of a very bountiful widow, whose husband during his life was a yeoman of that country, dying rich, no doubt, as might well appear by the riches and plenty that abounded in every corner of the house. She is called the Widow Everett. At her house were met about 30 gentlemen. As such, and so plentiful variety of good fare, I have very seldom seen in any commoner's house. Her behavior, being very modest and friendly, argued her bringing up not to be rude. She was a woman of good presence, and if a fool may judge, of no small discretion.
So he's dancing along and he meets the widow Everett, and she says, "Come on back to my place." And he's like, "Okay."
Yep.
And he gets there and there are 30 other dudes there.
Yep. This is a very eyes wide shut situation.
Dearest London readers of this pamphlet, you'll never believe what happened to me. I never thought it could happen to me, but one day as I was dancing down the lane,
somebody put a blindfold on me and said, "Come to my party. You must wear a mask." And they were all fine gentlemen, and she was quite lovely, obviously.
She was modest, but she was friendly, and the little body, the discretion part.
A little bit.
What does that mean? That discretion part?
Oh, of no small discretion. Here it is. She was a woman of good presence, and if a fool may judge, of no small discretion.
Of no small discretion. That means she's not like shacking up with these 30 dudes.
No, absolutely not. Obviously, just somebody who uses her husband's wealth to bring merriment to many men at one time.
Good for her.
Right. You know, I mean, that's, is that an OnlyFans star? I don't know. Now, after the 9 Days' Wonder, Kemp returned to acting and toured the continent. Upon returning to London in 1602, records indicate that he joined the acting company Wooster's Men, but then disappeared entirely. He had been borrowing money from Philip Henslowe, who mentioned Kemp in his journal. In 1603, a new outbreak of the plague occurred, and on the death records was Kemp, a man. And most scholars have figured this was the end of William Kemp, died of the plague in poverty.
As you do.
As you do. There's your Chris Farley moment.
I mean, well, yeah.
There's your John Belushi moment.
Yeah. It's that, well, you know, what's the phrase? It's better to burn out than to fade away.
Yeah. And well, Zach, for better for worse, that is my story of William Kemp and the 9 Days' Wonder.
That's a great story. And, you know, it shows that, like, you know, people don't change.
Yeah. Now, I want to follow this up just a little bit. I didn't add it in here, but there is this thing, and I don't know how you feel about this, but there is this thing where it seems as though we have created this pantheon of gods in the academic world of
Mm-hmm.
anybody who was in the British Renaissance at that time. You know, anybody of note. We talk about Richard Burbage. We talk about what's his name, Ned Allen. We talk about
Yeah.
the will that was the young woman in all of these plays.
Uh-huh.
And then you have this Will Kemp, who was noted for being a very funny guy, and then went on this crazy publicity stunt and got madly wealthy and then lost it all.
Well, I mean, there's a reason why all those theaters were on the south side of the Thames, right? They were with all the whorehouses and the bear
Oh,
baiting and
yep.
it was looked down, like to be an actor is looked down upon, and probably the actions of dudes like this
Mm-hmm.
are the reason for it, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yep.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think we lionize anybody that we're taught did great things. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I mean, whether it's a lowly actor like Kemp and Elizabethan England, or it's Thomas Jefferson, right? I mean,
Right.
they were still people who
Yeah.
had appetites and needs and made mistakes. And
Yeah.
so, you know, I love the fact that we get to learn about the warts,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
I mean, I love thinking about all of these olden times when you didn't really have plumbing systems. And so, you know, all trash and human
Yeah,
refuse was just like thrown into the street, and
sure.
everything smelled horrible and people
Oof.
smelled awful. And how many maladies like would give you just uncontrollable diarrhea? All of these people had these.
People didn't regularly bathe for like 200, 300 years after that, right?
Right?
Yeah. Like just how brutal and short life would be back then.
Right. So all of these, you know, godlike figures had acne scars and greasy hair and
Uh-huh.
you but we still, you know, put laurels on their heads.
Well, I mean, it's, you know, I think it's human nature to look at your heroes, right?
Yeah.
To have those heroes and think only the best of them.
But here's why I bring this up, because if you look at how he's represented later you know, hundreds of years after his death, he's a character in so many plays, so many books, so many TV series and films. There was
Mhm.
this comedian, or I guess kind of a specialty performer, who did all of these goofy stunts. What was his name? Tim Fitzhyam. One of
Okay.
his stunts was like he crossed the Thames in a boat or in a tub, like using the tub like as a canoe.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but one of his stunts was he did the 9 days wonder. He completed the 9 days wonder. I don't know if he did it in the same way that Kemp did, stopping in towns and, you
Sure.
know, meeting the highest quality of people. Uh,
And when was this?
this, I want to say it was like 2018.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah. I think you could, but again, now you kind of have to if you say you're going to do that, because
Yeah.
people are going to live tweet that, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, they're going to be able to check your phone data and see, oh, you didn't do that. You know, you stopped here, or you got in a car and drove this far. And
Yep. Yep. I saw on your GPS you got on a train. Yeah.
yeah, you have to, because there's so many ways to check you now. When before it was just like, hey, man, I'll give you whatever the fraction of a penny it is. I'll give you this goose egg if you tell people I danced through here and had a bawdy night in the inn, right?
Yep. Yep. And oh, and you will get a special mention in my pamphlet.
In my pamphlet. Yes. Yeah.
Oh man. Well, there we go. Any final thoughts on Will Kemp and the 9 days wonder?
It's fascinating. I love those like endurance performance thing, the David Blaine type,
Oh,
you know,
I
things.
thought of David Blaine so many times in this.
Yeah.
It's like I'm gonna sit in like a tank of my own pee for 45 days. You're like, okay.
Right. Which in, as we were talking about hygiene before, it'd be like, what, that's Tuesday, right? I always do that.
I marinate in filth before a big date.
Our family sits in pee on a Saturday night for fun.
And that's where we play our tabor and pipe. Oh,
Yes.
boy. Man, that's awesome. Let's face it, this isn't the first time you've heard of a celebrity either launching some sort of publicity stunt or using their fame to gain more fame, or both. I think Zach's right. Kemp and his stunts just prove that, in the public eye, no matter how things change, some things stay the same. In this case, perhaps our tolerance for good-hearted distraction. I'd like to thank Zach Schneider for returning to the show once again, and as the overseer of Wyoming Thespians, I have a feeling I'll see him on the show sooner rather than later. But for now, I'll sign off. This has been another episode of Euripides Eumenides, a theater history podcast. I have been your host, Aaron Odom. Another episode will be in your ears in a fortnight, and I will see you at intermission.